What's going on, everyone? Today we need to talk about something that's sending shockwaves through the firearms community right now. The ATF has just made some major moves that could fundamentally change the landscape of gun ownership in America. We're talking machine guns, short-barreled rifles, and regulatory changes that haven't been seen in decades. So let's break down exactly what's happening, what it means for gun owners, and why this could be the biggest Second Amendment shift we've seen in a generation. But before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because developments like this are moving fast, and you're going to want to stay updated. All right, let's get into it. So here's what we know so far. According to multiple reports circulating in the firearms community and industry sources, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives has begun implementing policy changes that affect how certain firearms are classified and regulated under the National Firearms Act. Now, let me be crystal clear here, because there's a lot of speculation and misinformation floating around. We're not talking about a complete repeal of the National Firearms Act. We're not talking about machine guns being sold at your local gun store tomorrow. What we are talking about is a shift in how the ATF is interpreting and enforcing certain regulations, particularly around short-barreled rifles and potentially some aspects of NFA item classification. The most significant change appears to involve the regulatory framework that's been in place since the 1930s, specifically how the ATF processes and approves NFA items. For those who might not be familiar, the National Firearms Act requires special registration, a $200 tax stamp, and federal approval for items like suppressors, short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns, and yes, machine guns. To understand why this is such a big deal, we need to talk about how we got here. The National Firearms Act was passed back in 1934 during the height of Prohibition-era violence. It was designed to regulate what lawmakers at the time considered gangster weapons. Then, in 1986, the Hughes Amendment effectively banned civilian ownership of any new machine guns manufactured after May 19th of that year. Since then, the ATF has been the gatekeeper. They've interpreted these laws, created regulations, and enforced them with varying degrees of consistency. And that's putting it mildly. Over the years, we've seen things like pistol braces come under fire, bump stocks get banned and then unbanned through court rulings, and countless debates over what actually constitutes a short-barreled rifle versus a pistol. Gun owners have been fighting these battles in courts, in Congress, and through administrative challenges for decades. Groups like the Firearms Policy Coalition, Gun Owners of America, and the Second Amendment Foundation have been relentless in pushing back against what many see as regulatory overreach. The climate has been shifting. We've seen major Supreme Court decisions like Bruen that have reinforced Second Amendment protections. We've seen growing pushback against agency overreach across multiple federal departments. And now it appears that pressure is translating into actual policy changes at the ATF levels. So what does this actually mean for you if you're a gun owner? Let's break it down into practical terms. First, if these changes involve short-barreled rifles, we could be looking at a situation where millions of pistol brace-equipped firearms no longer face the uncertainty they've been under. Remember, the ATF flip-flopped on pistol braces for years before finally trying to classify them as SBRs. If that regulatory framework is being rolled back or clarified, that's huge for anyone who owns an AR pistol or similar firearm. Second, streamlined NFA processing could mean shorter wait times for suppressors and other NFA items. Right now, gun owners wait anywhere from several months to over a year for approval on a suppressor or SBR. If the ATF is reforming how they handle these applications, we could see those timelines dramatically reduced. Third, and this is the big one people are speculating about, if there are changes to how machine guns are classified or regulated, we could potentially see new pathways for civilian ownership under certain circumstances. Now again, I want to stress that we don't have confirmation on the full scope of these changes, but the implications are significant. What we're not seeing is a free-for-all. Federal law still exists. Background checks still exist. The framework of firearms regulation is still in place. But what appears to be changing is how that framework is being interpreted and enforced by the regulatory agency in charge. This doesn't happen in a vacuum. There's a broader legal and political context here that's important to understand. The Supreme Court's decision in West Virginia versus EPA limited how much power federal agencies have to create major policies without clear congressional authorization. That case wasn't about guns, but the principle applies across the board to regulatory agencies like the ATF. Then you have the administrative state under scrutiny like never before. There's bipartisan frustration, though for different reasons, with how unelected bureaucrats create rules that have the force of law without going through Congress. The ATF has been at the center of this debate, particularly after controversial rules on pistol braces and ghost guns. Add to that the current political environment. The composition of Congress, the administration, and the courts all play a role in how aggressive or restrained agencies like the ATF feel they can be with their regulatory actions. When agencies sense that their rulemaking authority might get challenged successfully in court, or that they lack political support for aggressive enforcement, they adjust accordingly. We've also seen states pushing back. Constitutional carry is now the law in over half the states. Sanctuary jurisdictions for gun rights have popped up in numerous counties. The cultural and legal landscape around firearms has shifted dramatically in the past decade, and federal agencies are not immune to those pressures. So where do we go from here? That's the million-dollar question. First, we need to wait for official guidance from the ATF. Rumors and industry chatter are one thing, formal policy documents are another. Gun owners should be watching for Federal Register postings, official ATF announcements, and guidance from firearms attorneys. Second, expect legal challenges. No matter what direction this goes, somebody's going to sue. If the ATF is rolling back restrictions, anti-gun groups will challenge it. If they're simply clarifying existing rules, gun rights groups might push for more. The courts are going to be busy. Third, Congress could get involved. If the ATF is making significant policy shifts, lawmakers might try to codify those changes into actual law, or alternatively, they might try to block them. We've seen this dance before. And finally, gun owners need to stay informed and stay involved. These policy battles are won or lost based on public pressure, legal advocacy, and political engagement. If you care about your Second Amendment rights, now is not the time to be complacent. Look, we're living through a fascinating moment in firearms law and Second Amendment jurisprudence. What seemed impossible just a few years ago is now being discussed as real possibility. Whether you think these changes go too far, don't go far enough, or strike the right balance, one thing's clear: the status quo is shifting. I'll be following this story closely and bringing you updates as more information becomes available. This is the kind of thing that develops over weeks and months, not overnight, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss anything. What do you think about these changes? Are you optimistic about the direction of gun rights in America, or do you have concerns? Let me know in the comments below. I actually read them, and I love hearing different perspectives from this community. If you found this breakdown helpful, smash that like button, share this with your fellow gun owners.